Good evening. I decided to do an Ask Me Anything episode tonight for my live. There's a few things I could talk about, but they just kind of feel like scrambled thoughts in my brain right now, and I haven't taken the time to process them and put them into something that would probably be intelligible. So I decided that I'll let you ask the questions, and if you don't have any questions, I have some questions that Rich Litvin posted in one of his blogs that I'll just talk through and answer. I will tell you this. To the person who just joined, it's an Ask Me Anything. So if you have a question for me, ask me anything. I have no idea what it is, and I don't even know who it is. So I'll just go for it. I'll just live on the edge here. And I'll be really honest, I really don't want to be doing a video right now, but there's something really powerful that I'm experiencing in this daily posting challenge. And there's 3 of us doing these daily posting now, and we decided to call it a daily posting invitational. And if you want to join us, you're invited. It's an open invitational. What I'm experiencing is the power of commitment on the front end and accountability on the back end. There's been several times, I think I'm 5 weeks into these videos now, there's been several times that I have not really felt like it. I've done it and it was doable, but this is the second time specifically that I really didn't want to do a video. And both times, including just now, I was just staring at my phone for a few minutes, just it's not even just gathering the courage, it's just hitting the button and say, here I go. Maybe it is a courage of, and I think it's just a vulnerability of speaking into it. But it's a commitment I made. I'm going to be the person who is my word and do a video every day on accountability in the back end. There's 2 other people that I'm accountable. I'm not accountable to them as much as I'm just accountable with them, and they're accountable with me to do this. So the power of commitment on the front end and accountability on the back end is really powerful. I've never experienced it quite in this way before, that it's brought me to do things that I really don't feel like doing. I'm very tired. Is it a parent thing to do to fall asleep while your kids watch movies on Friday nights? I don't know, but I fall asleep almost every Friday night while my kids watch movies, or a movie. So I was sleeping for 30 minutes out there. Katie's away for the weekend at a ladies retreat at the Wilds, which is super exciting. And so anyway, I probably look really tired, and that is because I am tired. And I'm here because of my commitment and because of the accountability to my friends I'm doing this with. So Rich Litvin, if you don't know Rich Litvin, he is an excellent coach. And he has posted 35 questions. He says 35 questions that will change your life, not because of the power of the questions, but because of the insights that can come as a result of the questions. And so if anybody has a question, ask me anything. I'll do my best to answer it. But in the absence of any questions so far, I'll just go through some of these questions. So this is the first question I'll talk about is what are your top 3 business or career successes that you're most proud of? I used to define success as the amount of money that someone made. I used to define success as the amount of recognition that somebody had. I used to define success as the amount of prowess that somebody had. And I've redefined success as not necessarily that. When I think of success, the very first thing that came to mind was how I left a very promising company in Atlanta and moved halfway across the country to Illinois for my family. I was traveling a lot in the job in Atlanta. It was a good job. I worked with some really good people, but I was traveling more than I wanted to travel. We had 2 kids. We wanted to have a 3rd kid, and it just wasn't feasible the way that we were living life to have a 3rd kid and for me to keep on traveling. And so I quit that job. I'd been there about 3 years. And the guy who I was working for had taken me under his wing as an intern in college. He had offered me 3 years of intern work. And I had learned so much under him. I was modeling myself after him in my career. And he was really, really a very kind man to me, and I still have a relationship with him. And well, shoot, if you know him, it's Troy Boley. Troy was very, very kind to me. And Troy, if somehow you ever watch this, I have always appreciated your support back then. But the company was required more of my time than I wanted to give away from my family. So what I consider success is that I did not put my career in that job above my family, and we moved to Illinois. 3 years later, we lived in Illinois for 3 years. 3 years later, we were at a place where my parents were in Greenville, South Carolina. My in-laws were in Atlanta, and it was a long 12-hour drive one way every time we came back to see them. All four grandparents, this is 6 years ago, all four grandparents were alive and healthy. They're still alive and healthy. And we wanted our kids, Katie and I wanted our kids to be around their grandparents as much as possible. And so I left another great company, Marathon Petroleum, another great company working with great people. I quit that job to move back here to Macon. So I consider one of my top successes in my career that I didn't put my career above my family those 2 times. Those were defining moments for our family. And if I could go back and make those decisions again, I'd make them 100 times out of 100. I'm really, really glad I made those decisions. So it said, what are your top 3 business or career successes? And by the way, if you just tuned in, you can ask me anything. I don't know who you are. I don't know what questions you might ask, but I'm willing to live on the edge of vulnerability of what you might ask. And if you don't ask any questions, I'm just reading a couple questions here that Rich Litvin posted for this live. So top 3, that was my top one, I'd say, was the willingness to move and not put my career above my family. I think another one was and I really don't feel like this was my success, but I have been blessed to be surrounded by people who are excellent in what they do. When I think about Troy Boley, that was excellent mentor for me. When I moved to Illinois, I was doing EPD air permitting in the refining industry, and I got to work alongside the top expert in the nation in air permitting for the EPD. I learned a lot from him. I worked with a guy, Chris Statz. He was a very, very knowledgeable guy. He was the first time I saw somebody bring in all the technical knowledge he had as a chemical engineer and the people skills and make it really practical and speak to people on their level. And so I got to work with him. He told me something one time. I still remember it very well. He says, Derek, you need to know when you go into a meeting with people who are more powerful than you in the business. You need to know when you need to pound your fist and say, I am not leaving this table until I get what I want. This is a very strange concept to me at the time. And back then I could not imagine myself ever pounding my fist on the table and saying, I'm not leaving this room until I get what I need. I'm more that person now, but I certainly wasn't back then, but that advice stuck with me. Another person I got to be surrounded by was a guy named Bill Apple. Bill Apple was at the end of his career as I was beginning my career, and he gave me advice one time. And I have used this advice for myself. I've repeated this advice to numerous people. He goes, when you're leaving a company, make sure you're not just running from the company. Make sure you're running to a company. And I've been blessed that each move I've made through my career, I've not just been running from or just walking away from a company, but I've been running to an opportunity as well. And so I consider it a success, and it's not even my success. It's just the fact that I've been placed with these great mentors in my life. And even right now, there's several people in my life who have taken me under their wing, or I've asked to get in their circle, in their orbit, and they've been very kind to me, and they've taught me many, many things. So I'm learning really the success idea right now of surrounding myself with people who inspire me, intentionally, not just by accident if I happen to come across them, but intentionally. So those are two top business career successes, is who I'm surrounding myself with and the decisions I made to never put my career above my family. Let's see, then, what are your top 3 personal or life successes? I think of myself as a 19-year-old when I came from, my parents were living in Ireland still, with my sisters, and I came to the States for college by myself. And by God's grace, I did okay. I grew up overseas. I grew up in Africa for 8 years, spent a few years in the States when I was 10 to 12 years old, spent 7 or 8 years in Ireland. And really, I was an American by birth, American by nationality. My parents were American. I grew up in an Americanized home, but in a culture that was not American. And I think when I think of a success, if you want to call it that, being able to integrate my way back into the American culture, which was like reverse culture shock. I'm American. I was an American kid, 19 years old, coming back to the States. That was reverse culture shock almost, and figuring out how to adapt to life in America on my own. And I had some very nice people who took care of me and helped me out, but I was 3,000 miles away from my family. And I made it. And I'm very thankful for the preparation my parents gave me to get to that point. I think also one of the most defining moments of my life was the college that my parents wanted me to go to, which is where I ended up going. I did not want to go there first. And I had the option to either honor my parents' wishes and go to that college for a year, or go to Bob Jones, which is where I wanted to go. And there's a moment where I decided, as a 19-year-old kid, I don't want the first decision that I make leaving home one of rebelling against my parents' wishes. And I've said this many times, in what was probably the only moment of wisdom when I was 19, I decided to honor my parents' wishes and go to the Bible College in Wisconsin for a year before I went to Bob Jones. And the way that I met Katie, just the people that I had to meet in order to meet Katie at Bob Jones, I would not have met those people had I not gone to Bible College in Wisconsin for a year. So God clearly had the timing worked out on that one. I didn't know it, obviously, at the time. So call that a success, call that a moment of wisdom. I'm really, really thankful for the time that I chose to honor my parents' wishes as I was leaving the house and choosing where I go to college that first year. I think another one, and again, a moment of success, I'm just thinking of defining moments in my personal life. I was working at Camp Spearhead, which was a camp for people with special needs. And it was not a Christian camp. It had been started by a Christian, but it was not a Christian camp. Not all the counselors who worked there were Christians. And the layout of the camp was, I was in cabin 4. I'll back up so you can just kind of see where I'm looking at here. I was in cabin 4, which is over here in the campground. Cabin 21 was up here on the hill, and every night several counselors would get together in cabin 21, and they would get out the beer and they drink and party through the night. I had never had alcohol up until that point, and but everybody knew that cabin 21 was a party cabin. And I was not where I should have been in my spiritual relationship with God. And I decided one night, halfway through the summer, that I was going to go to cabin 21. And if someone offered me a beer, I'd drink it. And that would have been the first time I had ever had alcohol. As I was walking across from cabin 4 to cabin 21, there was another student there from Bob Jones. His name is Rick. And in between cabin 4 and cabin 21, there's a canteen, the outside canteen area where there were picnic tables and stuff. And Rick was sitting there by himself at one of the picnic tables reading something, a magazine or something. And I remember walking from cabin 4 to cabin 21. And I looked over and I saw Rick. And I thought to myself, if Rick doesn't have to be in the party cabin partying, I don't need to be in the party cabin partying. So I turned around and I went back to cabin 4. And I never went to cabin 21 to party that summer. I did not have any alcohol, and I've not had any alcohol in my life. And to me, that's significant. I have a very addictive personality. I am all in. When I'm in, I'm all into whatever I do. There's both strengths and curses of that personality type. But what I know is that I would have struggled with an addiction to alcohol had I started drinking. I'm very, very thankful in this defining moment of my life as a 21-year-old kid who wasn't even right with the Lord, that God put Rick. And I'll be honest, I think it was Rick. I'm not past God putting an angel there that looked like Rick to stop me in my tracks and turn me around. Now, that's my story. That's my defining moment in my life. I haven't had any questions yet from the audience. So if you want to ask me a question, it's very vulnerable of me to be asking for questions from I don't know who. It just shows me how many people are watching. I don't know who's watching. If you want to ask me a question, I'll do my best to answer it. I'll live on the edge of vulnerability. You have my guarantee and my promise. The next question, maybe the last question, I don't know. What are you known for? What can people count on you for? I think a lot of people know me for playing the piano. I would like to think that people know me for being kind and compassionate. I would like to think that people know me as someone who is smiling and joyful. I would like to think that people know me as a family man, somebody who values my family, who values my relationship with Katie, somebody who knows me as a believer, as a Christian, somebody who knows me. I hope I'm known to people as somebody who is a steward, a good, faithful steward of the talents and the gifts that God has given me. That's what I hope I'm known for. Some people know me in a more humorous way as being really good at Excel and spreadsheets. I can find myself lost in spreadsheets from time to time. That's when my engineering background comes out. What can people count on you for? I think a lot of the time I am pretty lighthearted, I think, in casual circumstances. I think I can be pretty serious. If I'm up teaching or if I'm up speaking, I think I can kind of get in a zone which makes me more serious, but I think I'm lighthearted. I like to joke. I like to laugh. I like to be a goofball. I own the title of being goofy. I like being goofy. People know me for being I want people to count on me to be a servant. A verse that continually comes to mind for me as I model myself after Christ is in Philippians 2, where it says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who took on him the form of a servant. I want people to be able to count on me as a servant. I want my wife and I want my kids to be able to count on me to be there for them. I place a high value on being there for my family. And it's one of the competing interests when I think about being an entrepreneur. One of the competing interests is time in the business and time in my family. And I had a really powerful conversation last night with my coach and one of my friends, Josh and Kent, last night around this competing interest between the time spent with my business and the time spent with my family. And they really challenged me and encouraged me on keeping and setting healthy boundaries for my business and for my family and my career. So what can people count on me for? I want my family to count on me to be there, to be faithful, I want Christ to be able to count on me, that when he nudges me to do something, that I'll do it. That when he gives me an idea, when he puts an opportunity in my lap, that I don't lock the door, but I bust through the door with his strength. Let's see. Maybe the last question I'll answer here. What is the hardest thing in business or life that you have overcome? The hardest thing in business or life that I've overcome. Well, I'll tell you what's coming to mind. I was trying to figure out if it's the hardest. What's coming to mind is, because we moved around a lot growing up, I think by the time I was 18, I lived in 18 different places. Because we moved around a lot, there wasn't a whole lot of stability in my friendship circles. And so I remember my teenage years, I remember one of the most vivid memories I have is sitting at our dining room table in Ireland. It was a circular table in a room that was the school room and the dining room, and had like 6 bookshelves along the wall. And I remember just bawling my eyes out as a 14-year-old, because I really didn't have anybody to call my friend. And I felt very isolated, and I didn't feel like I belonged. And even still talking about it brings emotion close to the surface. And I don't know that I had to overcome as much as I just, I carry this story with me into my adult years and even into my 30s. And I think even sometimes, in a sense, I'm still deconstructing the story for myself, is that I don't belong. And that's the lens through which I saw my life in my teenage, or up definitely through my teenage years, is that I didn't belong. I was different. It wasn't okay to be different, and I did not belong. And I've always, and what I wanted more than anything else was to belong. And so I think working through that story I told myself was that I didn't belong, to say the gift of that, I do belong, and the gift of growing up, I'll say lonely. It's not that I was completely lonely, but the gift of growing up without many friends is that I value relationships very, very deeply. I've been told I'm very, very good at listening, especially like in a one-on-one coaching session. I remember one guy told me, his name is Sean. He said, I've just been venting to you for the last 30 minutes and you've just listened. It never dawned on me that I would not listen to that. There was a lot going on in his life, and nobody else was listening to him this way in his life. But I think one of the gifts of working through what I felt as loneliness and not belonging growing up was that I value relationship, and I value that one-on-one connection. And I'm able to serve and support people through coaching in such a way that other people can't. I remember in my 20s, I said, one of my coworkers said, you just care too deeply about people. Like, you just care too much. So I thought, I need to care less. That must be the solution, is caring less. So I tried to care less about people, and that didn't work, because I care very much about people. So I'm not sure if it's something that I had to overcome, but I think one of the biggest gifts that has come from one of my biggest wounds in the past is the gift of loneliness. And that title, that phrase, the gift of loneliness, is I've packed away in the back of my mind as a title of a book I'm going to write. The gift of loneliness. I think many, many people experience loneliness, and I was not even aware that there could be a gift in that until in the last few years, the idea that in every pain, in every adversity, in every sorrow, there's an equal or greater benefit, gift through that. And one of my coaches, Tracy, asked me, I don't know, it was maybe 6 or 9 months ago. She said, Derek, what is the gift of that loneliness? And it was in these last 6 to 9 months that I've really identified that my value of one-on-one connection is a result of the gift of connection that has come through the lack of deep connection I had growing up just because of the traveling around that we did. And just to be really, really clear, there were times in my life that I was bitter about how I was raised and where I was raised. And I'm sitting here today, 37 years old, being able to look back at that, knowing that there were times in my life where I was bitter about that, and saying, I know that's exactly where God wanted me. I know that's exactly what God wanted me to go through. And I'm extremely grateful for what I learned and for the gifts that have come from growing up overseas and growing up without the stability of deep connection with friends. All right, last chance. If you want to ask me anything, I will answer it. I promise. And the cool thing is I have 5% left on my battery. So I was going to talk about something else real quick that was very interesting to me, but I don't want to get this cut off. So happy Friday night. Get a good night of sleep. I'm about to go to bed here in a little bit. Get a good night of sleep. Enjoy the weekend. Make the most out of your weekend. I think one of the biggest shifts for me in the last couple of years is recognizing that I get to choose how I show up no matter what. And it was several years ago that I realized that people make Monday morning out to be this monster. And I used to fall in the trap of that. Oh, tomorrow's Monday. Oh, I hate Mondays. Mondays are so horrible. And it was as if Monday was created outside of me in this horrible way, and I didn't have a choice. And one day I woke up to the idea that I have a choice that Monday could be a great day. I woke up to the realization that I can be an owner of my Monday. I'm not a victim of Monday. So that's why I say, have a great day tomorrow. Choose to make the best of whatever you're doing tomorrow. Man, do it. Oh, Danny wants to know, did I lie about the safety issue to skip book club? I did not. That was real. I had a safety inspection that I had to skip book club. Book club's a nerdy name for it. It's a mastermind, but we call it book club. I had to go for a safety inspection, and so I wasn't able to make it. And some people, who will remain unnamed, give me a hard time that I just didn't want to lead it that week. All right. Enjoy your Friday night. Peace out. Good night.